On Michigan Avenue, a millionaire stops at a red light and sees a hummingbird with the words, "Breathe, heart," on a vendor's wrist. It was the same drawing from the note that saved him when he collapsed in the dark of a parking garage. Coincidence? Or destiny collecting an old debt? When he tries to thank her, he discovers an operation to clean up the streets is underway, and that the right kind of help might cost him everything. How far will he go to make amends for what he didn't see? And what does she hide behind her tired smile? Before you hear this beautiful story, subscribe to our channel and receive heartwarming stories every day. The late afternoon in Chicago carried that sticky, humid October heat that clung to the skin like a second layer of clothing. The air smelled of hot asphalt, diesel exhaust, and every now and then, the frying oil from a street food cart. Arthur Vance was stopped at the traffic light on Michigan Avenue, his car window slightly ajar, the air conditioning struggling against the warmth seeping through the gaps. His hands on the steering wheel were relaxed, eyes half closed, an accumulated weariness from an entire week of meetings that dragged on. It had been like this for months, years perhaps, a routine without color, without surprise, without anything to make his chest tighten from anything other than stress. That's when he saw the vendor. She appeared between the white crosswalk lines, a thin shadow against the setting sun that glinted off the building windows. She carried a tray of homemade treats balanced in one hand, those aluminum trays with improvised string handles, and with the other, she gently tapped on car windows. Her fingers were quick, precise, without aggressive insistence, just enough of a touch to get attention. Her voice was muffled by the traffic noise, but Arthur could hear the practiced cadence. Gourmet pretzels, artisan cookies, fresh baked goods, all homemade, all fresh. He was about to roll up his window. He had done it automatically for years. It was an almost unconscious gesture. See someone approach, roll up the window, look away, wait for them to pass. But this time, something stopped him. It was a movement on her wrist, a different kind of shimmer. The sunlight grazed the small, delicate tattoo, finely drawn on her tan skin. Arthur tilted his head, trying to get a better look. It was a hummingbird, and beside it, in tight, almost illegible cursive, the words, "Breathe, heart." The world slowed down. It didn't stop. It kept spinning, but at a different, slower pace, as if someone had placed a finger on the axis of reality and forced everything to decelerate. Car exhaust still rose, heavy and gray. Horns still blared, impatient and irritated. Sweat still trickled down Arthur's neck, beneath his shirt collar. But none of that mattered. Only that image mattered. The hummingbird, the phrase, the vendor's wrist. He had seen it before. He didn't know where. He didn't know when. But his body recognized it before his mind. That strange, almost physical sensation of something known returning after being lost for a long time. His stomach churned. His hands on the steering wheel grew sweaty. His breathing became slower, heavier, as if the air had become too dense to enter his lungs properly. Arthur opened his mouth to call the vendor, to ask about the tattoo, but the light turned green. The horn of the car behind blared, urgent. The vendor was already far away, crossing between cars with the same ease as always, her tray balanced, her steps sure. Arthur drove on, but the image wouldn't leave his head. The hummingbird, the phrase, "Breathe, heart." He kept repeating it mentally, trying to remember where he had seen it. His right hand left the steering wheel, went to the inside pocket of his suit jacket, and pulled out his wallet. He opened it. In the document compartment, carefully folded, was the note. A piece of paper already yellowed, with worn edges from being handled so much. Arthur unfolded it as he drove, his eyes alternating between the paper and the street. And there it was, the same drawing, crude, done in a hurry, but unmistakable, a hummingbird, and the same words, breathe, heart. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep. He lay in his empty River North apartment, an apartment too large for one person, filled with furniture someone else had chosen for him. The windows looked out over the city, but he didn't see the city. He saw the parking garage, a subterranean parking garage in the West Loop, almost 2 years ago. He had left a meeting that lasted until 11 at night, exhausted, with low blood sugar because he had skipped lunch and dinner. He took the stairs instead of the elevator, trying to save a few minutes, trying not to think about the headache throbbing in his temples. On the second sublevel, his legs gave out. They simply stopped responding. He felt his vision blur first, as if someone had smeared petroleum jelly on his eyes. Then came the dizziness. His body lost its balance. He tried to grab the wall, but his fingers slipped on the cold concrete. He remembered falling. He remembered the shock of his knee hitting the ground. After that, just blanks. When he regained consciousness, he was on the ground, his head resting on something soft. A backpack, perhaps. Someone was talking to him. A feminine voice, calm, firm, without desperation. Breathe slowly. Inhale through your nose. Hold for 3 seconds. Exhale through your mouth. The voice repeated it like a prayer, like a mantra. Arthur tried to open his eyes, but the parking garage light was too strong. He closed them again. He felt something being placed in his mouth, the taste of glucose gel, sweet, sticky, almost cloying. Someone was holding his head, preventing him from falling to the side, keeping his head slightly elevated. Keep breathing. You're getting better. Just a little more. When he fully regained consciousness, he was alone. The voice was gone. The backpack was gone. But on the car's dashboard, taped, there was a note. I called dispatch. They're coming to get you. Take care. And in the corner, hand-drawn, quick, almost rushed, a hummingbird. And the phrase, breathe, heart. Arthur put the note in his wallet that very day. He never let it go. But he never knew who had saved him. Now, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and seeing nothing, he was certain. That tattoo was no coincidence. It couldn't be. It was the same thing. The same drawing. The same words. The vendor who crossed the Michigan Avenue intersection every day selling gourmet street pretzels was the woman who had saved him. She had drawn that on the note. Or she had seen that drawing somewhere. Or, no, there had to be some connection. There needed to be. And he didn't even know her name. He didn't even know if she remembered him. But he had to find out. He had to thank her. He had to understand. Arthur spent the entire night awake. It wasn't common insomnia. That feeling of being tired but unable to sleep. It was something else. It was a restlessness that pushed his body out of bed, that made his legs tremble even when still, that kept his mind spinning in circles endlessly. At 5:30 in the morning, he gave up trying. He got up, showered on autopilot, put on the first clothes he found. By 6 o'clock, he was already on the street, driving without a clear destination, but knowing exactly where he needed to go. He returned to Michigan Avenue. He parked his car near the same traffic light in a metered parking space that was still empty. He bought a bottle of mineral water at a bakery that had just opened, asked for small change, quarters, dollar coins, small bills, and went back to his car. He waited. The morning traffic was different from late afternoon. More buses, packed with sleepy-faced people. More pedestrians, walking fast, earbuds in, eyes lost. Fewer parked cars. Traffic flowed more freely. without the rush hour congestion of the afternoon. He stayed there until noon. The vendor did not appear. The sun rose higher in the sky, beating directly on the windshield, heating the car's interior despite the air conditioning. Arthur turned off the engine occasionally to save gas, but soon turned it back on when the heat became unbearable. He drank the entire bottle of water, bought another, waited longer. Nothing. At 2 in the afternoon, he gave up. He returned to his River North apartment, took another shower, tried to eat something, but he couldn't. His mind was elsewhere. The next day, he returned. This time, he brought a baseball cap and dark sunglasses. He didn't want anyone from the company to see him there, parked, waiting for a street vendor in the middle of Michigan Avenue. Not out of embarrassment, but because he didn't want explanations. He didn't want questions. He didn't want to have to justify why he was doing it. He left at 3 in the afternoon, drove slowly, and parked in the same spot. He turned the radio down low. A jazz station was playing in the afternoon. He stayed there, watching the traffic light change color. Green, yellow, red. Again. The cycle repeated itself, monotonous, predictable. 2 hours later, as the sun began to set and traffic thickened, she appeared. Same tray, same artisan cookies wrapped in clear cellophane. Same ease in crossing between cars without hesitation. Arthur waited for her to get close. He got out of the car before the light turned green. He walked toward her, his legs a bit shaky, his heart pounding. The vendor stopped when she saw him coming, suspicious. Her eyes narrowed. She took half a step back, adjusting the tray's strap on her shoulder. "Excuse me, miss," Arthur began, trying to sound casual, but his voice came out a little higher than normal. "I don't want to buy anything. I just wanted to talk. Can I? Can I pay for your time? How much do you charge per hour?" She took another step back, more firmly this time. Her face hardened. "If you're trying to mess with me, forget it. I don't have time for this. And I'm not that kind of person, if that's what you're thinking." "No, no," Arthur said quickly, raising his hands in a defensive gesture. "It's nothing like that. I swear. It's serious. I saw your tattoo yesterday. The hummingbird. And the phrase, 'breathe heart.' I've seen that before. That drawing, those words." "When?" Arthur asked. "Where? Tell me a time, a place. I'll be there." She hesitated. Her eyes returned to his face, studying, evaluating. "Come back here tomorrow, 5 in the afternoon. But don't follow me, okay? I already have too many problems in my life. I don't need more." Arthur nodded. "You got it. I'll be back. 5 in the afternoon, I'll be here." She turned her back, walking toward the curb. Arthur remained, clutching the note, its paper soft from years of folding. He then returned to his car, tucked the note into his wallet, and left. Her image lingered. Wary face, tired eyes, tense shoulders, and the hummingbird tattoo on her wrist, saying, "Breathe, heart." The next day, Arthur arrived at 5 sharp, having spent the day rehearsing sincerity, not desperation. Maya was already there, on the curb near the bus stop, her tray resting on a low wall. He offered her one of 2 cold, sweating half-liter water bottles. She accepted, eyes wary, holding it, turning it between her fingers, as if weighing trust. "Speak," she said, blunt. Her voice, rougher than he recalled, like someone shouting all day, swallowing street dust. "What do you want?" "I want to thank you," Arthur replied, voice weaker than intended. He cleared his throat. "If you helped me that day, I want to know how I can repay you, truly. This isn't empty talk, it's serious." Maya finally opened the bottle, took a long, slow swallow. Throat moving. Wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, she asked, "Repay me how?" "I don't know. What do you need? A better job? Help with something?" I have a foundation that offers microloans and training for small entrepreneurs. I can place you in a project with salary, signed contract, and benefits." She laughed, a tired sound from someone who had heard it all before. "Look, I appreciate the intention, truly, but I don't want charity or an office job. I know how it works. Fixed hours, meetings, reports. People talk pretty, but think in numbers. While that's happening, I lose the street's flow, the traffic hours. That's what pays my gas bill and my nephew's school." Arthur fell silent. He hadn't thought about that. Never did. He always thought formal work was an automatic solution. But Maya was right. Her life was structured in a way he didn't understand. He was trying to dismantle it without even asking what she truly needed. "I'm sorry," he said, feeling the weight of the words. "I didn't think it through. Didn't think about what you would lose." "Yeah," Maya said, leaning her head back against the wall behind her. Her body relaxed a little, but the tension was still there, in her shoulders, in the way she held the bottle. "Most of you don't think. You want to help, but you want to help the way you think is right, not the way we actually need." "Then tell me," Arthur insisted, leaning forward. "Tell me what you truly need. Not what I think you need. What you really need." Maya looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were dark, deep, and held a hardness that came from years of struggle. But there was something else there too. Weariness. Maybe even a flicker of hope hidden deep within. "Look, I understand you want to help, but it's not that simple. There's a lot you don't know, a lot that's happening here on these streets that you can't even imagine." "Then tell me," Arthur repeated. She hesitated. She drank more water. She looked at the ground, at the cars passing, at the people walking. Then she turned her eyes back to him. "You know there's a plan happening to get us out of here, right? The city, with the backing of big business, is preparing an operation. They want to clean up the area, put fancy kiosks in its place, corporate kiosks with expensive concessions, kiosks we can't afford, and then we disappear. We go to the outskirts, to places where no one buys anything. And then we starve, but at least Michigan Avenue looks nice for the tourists." Arthur's stomach churned. "How do you know this?" "Because I talk to the other vendors. We have meetings every week. We organize ourselves. And there are people inside City Hall who pass information to us. We know about the minutes, we know about the memos, and we know who's orchestrating all this." She paused, looking deep into his eyes. "It's a certain Valerie, director of your business alliance." Arthur's world stopped spinning. Valerie. He knew Valerie. He had worked with her for years. Efficient woman, always with a report in hand, always with a structured proposal, always with the right speech at the right time. But he had never stopped to ask where the proposals came from. He had never questioned the numbers. He had never gone to see on the streets what those numbers truly meant. "How do you know it's her?" Arthur asked, but he already knew the answer. "Because her name is in the leaked documents. Because she meets with the head of code enforcement every week, a certain Officer Miller. And because she's coordinating the operation that's going to sweep us out of here." Maya stood up, picked up her tray. "So, that's it. You want to repay me? Find out what your people are doing and stop it. Because if it doesn't stop, it doesn't matter how many bottles of water you bring me. I'll lose everything just the same." Arthur returned to the office the next day with a feeling he couldn't name. It wasn't anger. It wasn't guilt. It was something in between the two. He walked straight into Valerie's office without knocking. She was on the phone, but hung up when she saw him enter. "Arthur, what a surprise. Is there a problem?" "I want to see the contracts for the operation with the city, the ones involving street vendors." Valerie blinked. "Street vendors? You've never shown an interest in that before." "Now I do. Where are the documents?" She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. She handed it to him. Arthur flipped through it quickly, but soon saw what he was looking for. There was a contract with a code enforcement company. The head was an Officer Miller, and payment was by productivity. The more merchandise seized, the more money the company received. This is an incentive to repress people, Arthur said, holding the paper in his hand. It's not code enforcement, it's a hunt. It's urban management, Valerie replied, crossing her arms. The sponsoring businesses want results. They want safe tourists. They want clean streets. And we deliver. At what cost? Of taking away the livelihood of entire families. Families that can reorganize themselves elsewhere. Places where they don't impede the flow. Arthur felt his blood rise. He wanted to shout, but he knew it was pointless. Valerie wasn't wrong in her reasoning. She was wrong in her premise. She thought people were just chess pieces, that they could be moved without consequence. I want an extraordinary meeting of the Alliance, Arthur said, to discuss this. Arthur, calm down. There's no need for drama. We can adjust. I don't want to adjust. I want to suspend it until we properly understand what we're doing. Valerie sighed. Fine, you're the president, but there will be resistance. I know. Arthur left the office and went straight to his car. He called Maya. She answered on the third ring cautiously. Hello? It's me, Arthur. I need to talk to you. In person. Tonight. Why? Because I saw the contracts, and you were right. About everything. There was silence on the other end. Then Maya's voice, quieter. Grant Park, Gate 10, 8 o'clock. Grant Park at night had an almost reverent silence, broken only by the sound of sneakers hitting the pavement and the distant chirping of crickets hidden in the grass. The streetlights cast yellow circles on the ground, illuminating parts of the bike path but making the tree shadows even darker. The air was cooler, but still carried that Chicago humidity that never fully disappears. Arthur arrived first. He parked outside the park, walked to Gate 10. He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching the joggers who still passed even in the dark. Some came in groups, laughing, talking, others alone, headphones in. Faces closed in concentration. 20 minutes later, Maya appeared. She seemed to have come by bus. He could see the weariness on her face, in the lines around her eyes, in the way she walked slower than usual. She was in the same work clothes, but had removed her apron and let her ponytail down. Her hair fell over her shoulders, wavy, still bearing the marks of the elastic band. Let's walk, she said, without greeting. No hello, no how are you, just that. They entered through the gate and followed the bike path, side by side, but not touching. Arthur waited for her to speak first, but Maya seemed to be weighing her words, deciding where to begin, how much to reveal. The silence stretched between them. They passed the covered areas, the empty sports courts, the jogging path where people were still running. Finally, after about 5 minutes of walking aimlessly, she stopped near a bench. I need to show you something, Maya said, her voice lower than usual. But you have to promise me you won't use it against me, that you won't show it to anyone without my authorization, that you won't turn it into news, into an exposé. I promise, Arthur said, and felt the weight of the promise. Maya looked at him for another moment, studying his face, searching for signs of insincerity. Then she opened her backpack, took out her cell phone. She flicked her finger across the screen, searching. Then she turned the device toward him. Press play. It was a video. The image was shaky, filmed with a cell phone held by hand, not on a tripod. You could see a subterranean parking garage, little light from the fluorescent ceiling lamps, long shadows cast by the concrete columns. A man was lying on the ground. He wore a suit, but his jacket was open, his tie loose. His body was on its side, at an odd angle, his head fallen. There was a woman beside him. She was kneeling, with a backpack on the ground next to her. She spoke calmly, her voice firm but gentle. Breathe slowly. Inhale through your nose, count to 3. Now exhale through your mouth. That's it. Again. Her hands were on the man's head, holding it carefully, keeping his head slightly elevated. She took something from her backpack, a small silver sachet, tore it with her teeth, squeezed the gel into his mouth. Swallow slowly. No need to chew. Just let it go down. Arthur recognized the man on the ground. It was him, the suit he wore that day. The Italian shoes he'd bought on impulse. The watch on his left wrist. Everything was there, recorded, exposed. He saw himself vulnerable, unconscious, being cared for by a stranger. He saw Maya's hands, because now he knew it was her, holding his head, preventing him from falling to the side, keeping his airways clear. He saw the delicacy with which she moved him, as if she were caring for someone precious. The video continued. Someone off-screen spoke. "Are you recording?" "I am." "It's protocol. We always record." Maya looked at the camera quickly and spoke in a more professional tone. Male victim, approximately 40 years old, unconscious but breathing, applying hypoglycemia protocol, glucose administered orally, calling dispatch. She turned her eyes back to the man, to Arthur, and her voice softened again. "You're going to be okay. Just breathe. I'm here." The video ended. The screen went black. Maya put her phone back in her backpack, slowly, without looking at him. Arthur stood still, his whole body tense, his throat tight. He couldn't speak. He didn't know what to say. "I'm a city aid volunteer," Maya explained, finally looking at him. "I take shifts when I can. That day, we were doing a training patrol downtown. We left around 11 at night. We always film incidents, you know, to learn from them later, to teach other volunteers. It's protocol, but I never showed this video to anyone. I kept it because, I don't know. I thought you'd find it strange, that you'd think I wanted something in return, or that you'd be angry about being filmed in a vulnerable moment." "I'm not angry," Arthur managed to say, his voice hoarse. I'm grateful, more than you can imagine." Maya nodded, but still seemed tense. "There's one more thing. A few days after that, about 3 days later, a woman called City Aid, asking about you. She wanted details of the assistance. Said she was on your team, that she needed to inform the family, adjust the president's routine to prevent new episodes. I didn't speak with her, but the City Aid coordinator passed on some information. Basic data, time of incident, victim's condition, procedures performed. Her name was Valerie." Arthur felt a chill, not from cold, from understanding, from all the pieces falling into place at once. "Valerie," he repeated, more to himself than to her. "Yes," Maya confirmed. "And after that, she started telling the Greater Chicago Business Alliance Board that you were overwhelmed, that you needed to delegate, that she could take on more responsibilities. I know this because we have contacts with people who work at City Hall, and they know what's going on at the Alliance. These are worlds that cross paths." Arthur felt a chill, not from cold, from understanding. Valerie knew he had passed out, knew he had been helped by volunteers. And she used it. Used the information to build a narrative for the Alliance Board, that Arthur was overwhelmed, that he needed to delegate, that she could take on more responsibilities. And it worked. Over the last 2 years, Valerie had expanded her power without anyone questioning it. Because everyone thought Arthur needed a break. She manipulated you, Maya said, as if reading his thoughts. And you let her. Arthur looked at her. It wasn't out of malice. She saw an opening and took it. That's what ambitious people do. And now, are you going to let her continue? No. Now I know what's happening, and I'm going to stop it. They fell silent again. Maya put her phone away. Arthur sat on the bench, his hands clasped, his head bowed. He felt the weight of everything, of the money he had, the power he never asked for, the responsibility he had forgotten to carry. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, without looking at her. "Because someone has to," Maya replied. "And because you seem to be the only one of these business people who still has a shred of conscience." She sat beside him. They remained there, both of them, observing the empty park, the cold October wind, the dry leaves on the ground. After a while, Maya spoke again, quieter. "There's an operation scheduled, next week. They're going to confiscate everything, trays, merchandise, everything. Officer Miller will be in charge. He's merciless. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't listen. He just executes." "I'll stop it," Arthur said. "How? I don't know yet, but I'll find a way." Maya laughed. But this time it was a different kind of laugh. A laugh from someone who wants to believe, but has been let down before. "I hope you succeed. Because if you don't, I lose everything. And I'm not talking about my tray. I'm talking about my home, my food, my nephew's school." Arthur turned to her. "I won't let that happen. I promise you. A rich man's promise means nothing. This one does." The Greater Chicago Business Alliance Assembly was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Arthur arrived with a briefcase under his arm and a calm no one expected. Valerie Thorne was seated at the head, as always. The other members conversed in groups, waiting for the meeting to begin. When Arthur entered, the murmur subsided. "Good afternoon," he said, without preamble. "I requested this meeting because I need to discuss an urgent matter. You know we have a partnership with the city's code enforcement. You know this partnership involves actions to confiscate street vendor merchandise. What you perhaps don't know is that the contract compensates by productivity. That is, the more we seize, the more we pay." Silence. Some looks of surprise, others of discomfort. "This creates a perverse incentive," Arthur continued. "Code enforcement isn't working to organize the street. It's working to repress. And that goes against everything we claim to uphold. Transparency, social responsibility, humanized management." Valerie shifted in her chair. "Arthur, with all due respect, you're simplifying too much. We're responding to a demand from local merchants. They complain about street vendors at their doors. They complain about mess. We're just implementing what was requested. Implementing it in a way that destroys lives," Arthur countered. "I brought the numbers here. In the last 6 months, over 200 families lost their livelihoods because of this operation. 200. And we're paying for it." One of the members raised a hand. "But what's the alternative? Do we just let the street become a mess?" "The alternative is regularization," Arthur replied. "We can create a community vendor empowerment program. Small, low-cost structures with funding from our own foundation. No interest in the first year. With hygiene and customer service training. With defined hours so as not to obstruct passage. And with protection against surprise raids. The city signs a cooperation agreement, and we transform repression into integration." More silence. This time, it was laced with consideration. Valerie Thorne spoke again. "That's beautiful on paper, Arthur, but it's expensive and complex, and the sponsors will question it." "The sponsors will like it," Arthur said, "because we're going to show real results. Not apprehension counts, but the number of families regularized. And that yields much greater innage returns." The vote was close, but it passed. Arthur managed to suspend the contract with code enforcement until an alternative program was designed. Valerie Thorne voted against, but didn't have the strength to reverse it. The next day, Arthur went to City Hall. He didn't go alone. He brought Maya Rodriguez and other street vendor leaders. It was the first time he had entered a public building with people who had never had a voice there. The meeting was tense. The Commissioner of Public Safety tried to defend the old model. Officer Miller was present, arms crossed, looking like he already knew he was going to lose. But Arthur presented the numbers, presented the alternative project, and managed to schedule a working meeting for the following week. Maya didn't speak much during the meeting, but in the end, as they were leaving, she pulled Arthur by the arm. "Thank you," she said. "Truly, you didn't have to do this." "I did, yes," Arthur replied, "because I was an accomplice to this system for too long." They walked to his car. Arthur was going to offer her a ride, but Maya refused. "I prefer to take the L train, it's faster." She smiled, waved, and disappeared into the crowd of Daly Plaza. Arthur stood there, watching her leave, and felt something strange. It wasn't relief, it wasn't pride, it was something deeper. It was the feeling that, for the first time in years, he had done the right thing, not the efficient thing, not the profitable thing, the right thing. The program's implementation began 3 weeks later. The first downtown market stalls were installed at the busiest intersections of Michigan Avenue and State Street. Simple, but solid structures. With a canopy, space to store merchandise, and a QR code on the front for digital inspections. Maya received hers after taking the food handling certification course. It was a quick 2-week course, offered by a technical school partnering with the Vance Community Impact Foundation. She learned about preservation, hygiene, and customer service. On the day of the stall delivery, Arthur was there. Not for a photo op, to help assemble it. He arrived early in the morning, hands on tools, helping to tighten screws and fit structures. Maya laughed when she saw him sweating, trying to understand how an electric drill worked. "You're not very good with manual labor, are you?" she said, taking the tool from his hand. "No, but I'm learning." When the stall was ready, Maya stood there looking. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and it was secure. It wouldn't be seized unexpectedly. It wouldn't be destroyed by an inspector on a quota day. It was hers. "Thank you," she said to Arthur, without looking at him, "for not giving up." "I should be thanking you," Arthur replied, "for reminding me what truly matters." 2 months later, Maya reached out to Arthur again. She sent a message, asking to meet. Same time, same place. Grant Park. Gate 10. Arthur found it unusual, but he went. When he arrived, she was sitting on the same bench as before, an envelope in her hands. "I need to show you something," Maya said. "Something I've kept, but that you need to know." She opened the envelope and pulled out a photo. It was an old picture, slightly faded. It showed a volunteer vest, a city aid volunteer's vest, and in the pocket, a laminated paper with notes. But what caught Arthur's eye was the drawing on the fabric, drawn with a pen, crude, hurried, a hummingbird, and beside it, the phrase, "Breathe heart." Arthur took the photo, his hands trembling. This is mine. I drew this." "I know," Maya said. "I found this vest in the City Aid Volunteers Lost and Found, months after that day. I recognized the drawing, and I decided to get it tattooed, because I thought it was beautiful, because I thought someone who draws a hummingbird on their own vest in the middle of a difficult day is someone who is still trying to breathe. And I wanted to remember that. I wanted to remember that life demands breath, even when the streets are pressing in." Arthur couldn't speak. He held the photo, looking at the drawing he himself had made years ago in a moment of anxiety, and which was now tattooed on the wrist of the woman who had saved him. Everything clicked into place. The hummingbird wasn't hers, it was his, and she had taken that and transformed it into a personal commitment. "I didn't know," Arthur murmured. "I didn't know you had found it." "Now you know," Maya said, "and now we know this story didn't start by chance. It started because you were trying to breathe, and because I was trying to help, and because in the end, we found each other again, not by miracle, by choice." Valerie continued working at the Alliance, but with a reduced scope. She understood that the game had changed, and instead of resisting, she adjusted her ambition. She negotiated a technical role, overseeing the measurement of the social impact of the stall program. It was a less visible job, but one that yielded results. And Valerie had always been good at adapting. Officer Miller, without the apprehension targets, was reallocated to a conflict mediation unit. He still worked with street vendors, but now the job was to solve problems, not create them. He didn't like it at first, but over time, he discovered he preferred it that way. Less stress, less pressure. Maya consolidated her stall. Her income improved. She didn't get rich, but she became stable. And stability, for someone living on a tightrope, is wealth. Sophia, her sister, got a light remote phone support job from home. Leo, her nephew, received a scholarship from the vendor network, which now had funding from the Vance Community Impact Foundation. Everything improved, slowly, but it improved. Arthur and Maya continued to meet occasionally, not daily, but often, fostering a true friendship as they discussed the program, their lives, and their fears. A year later, the successful Downtown Market Stalls initiative had expanded across Chicago, bringing recognition to Arthur's business alliance, though he saw the work, not the trophy, as the real reward. During a visit to Maya's stall, a profound exchange affirmed their mutual gratitude. Arthur for Maya saving him physically and existentially, and Maya revealing they saved each other, him helping her find stability, and her helping him reconnect with a meaningful life, leaving her heart free to breathe without fear.